Before we get into the video, let me tell you about this pro who goes by the nickname Avatar Ball Bender. His birth name is Quang Duong. He is 18 years old and he turned pro in, well, whether or not you can believe it, 2023. And between the time he turned pro and now, he's accomplished a few things. He and CJ Klinger, another young touring pro who's actually 17 years old, they just beat the #1 men's doubles team at PPA Worlds in Dallas in 2 games, 11-1 and 11-6. However, this isn't the first time that Quang has beaten the #1 player. He's taken him down in singles, beating him at the Hyundai Masters event. This video features a breakdown of Quang's most notable trait, the forehand drive. There are certainly elements within Quang's form and technique that you're probably not going to be surprised by. However, there is one aspect that I wanted to look further into because for me it's surprising. I personally don't use this aspect and it isn't really that common either, so we'll jump into that too. What's interesting is everyone who plays him knows exactly what to expect, but they still can't stop it. Without further ado, Quang Duong. So we're going to break this down into 3 segments. We're going to look at the prep before he hits the ball, the contact during the ball, and then of course the finish. So when you look at the prep, he's using a closed stance. One could argue that it's a neutral stance. His paddle follows the height of the ball. You notice that he has a knee bend. He's using that neutral closed stance, and he has a bent elbow in the swing. His chest is facing the ball. Actually, his entire body is squared up with the ball during the prep, and as he hits, his chest and shoulders are parallel with the net, and his back foot is following through with the swing. One thing I was curious about is why do people bend their knees? This is pretty commonly seen in most sports. I would see it in fighting, of course. Anytime you're striking, you would want to have a slight bend in the knees. The degree to which you bend your knees is, I think, contextual. Definitely depends on the athlete, but you see it in baseball, you see it in tennis. So when I looked into that, there's definitely a few things that come up. It's improving your power, your control, and your consistency. So one of the things that comes up is that it improves balance and stability. So bending your knees lowers your center of gravity, giving you better balance and stability. And this helps you stay steady during your strokes, especially when reaching for wide or low balls. So the second point is generating power. That was always something that I was told. And you know that that was something that always came up when coaches would talk about the athletic position. Bent knee position allows you to use your legs to push off the ground, transferring energy from your legs through your core and into your racket or your paddle. This is known as kinetic chain transfer and is key to hitting powerful shots. And the third point, it enhances shot control. By bending your knees, you position yourself better to adjust to the ball's height and angle. And you notice that in Quang Duong's form. You notice that his height changes relative to the ball height. And you notice a lot of it is bending in the knees. He'll do a hip hinge as well. So hip hinge, you notice that his hips start to scoot back a little bit, but his chest and his back still maintains an upward angle. Just another few points, quick recovery for the next shot. And you notice this in Quang's form. A low stance prepares pros to push off and recover quickly after a forehand. You notice that he reloads very, very well and very quickly. He goes right back to that prep position. This is essential for maintaining court coverage in the fast-paced game of whether it's tennis or pickleball. So it does have a lot of benefits like precision, adaptability, efficient movement, all of these things that are very, very crucial for this high level of play. Vuori keeps things really, really simple. They do the important things really, really well, like materials, fit, colors, and durability. And ever since they came out with a 5-inch seam for the core shorts, it became my daily. It's super easy to wear around the house or while working out. So whether you're pushing the limits or kicking back, these shorts do it all. Find your gift this year at vuori.com. So previously I mentioned something about the hip hinge. There's an article that the author wrote about. He's coming from the angle of baseball, and he mentioned that bending at the hips allows for the hitter's weight to be distributed to their heels. And he's talking about changing the weight distribution from the heels to the toes. And he's talking about how the toes and the balls of the feet are not good at exerting and accepting force. This is why you can deadlift more than you can calf raise, and why only a select few people on this earth can support their own body weight while balancing on their toes. I think that article is very interesting. Running, sprinting, all require you to be on the balls of your feet. Fighting as well, striking, requires you to be on the balls of your feet. So power comes from the heels because this position engages the posterior chain, the glutes, hamstrings, lower back, which is responsible for generating strength and force. I think this author is talking about before you're striking, you're loading up on your heels, and as your body is following through, or that kinetic chain transfer, the weight is shifting from your heels to your toes. You do kind of see that in Quang's form. You notice that his back foot pushing off the heels, and eventually you start to finish on the balls of the feet. So I think that's what this author is getting at. So the one aspect that I don't have a lot of knowledge in or even really experience is the Western grip. The Western grip is a pretty commonly used grip in tennis, where the base knuckle of the index finger is placed on the fourth bevel of the racket handle. So why do people use the Western grip? It's popular for producing heavy topspin on the ball and is commonly used by players who favor a high aggressive ball trajectory. A few of the points that come up about using the Western grip is maximized topspin, increased power and spin on ground strokes, comfortable for aggressive play, better for countering slice, but there are certainly some drawbacks as well. So as far as the drawbacks, you have limited versatility, difficulty in transitioning to volleys, less effective in windy conditions. So limited versatility, they say that the Western grip can be less effective for hitting flat shots, especially on the backhand side, and it can be more difficult to adjust quickly to low balls or shots with a heavy slice. Western grip is effective when returning slice shots because the racket face is already in a position to handle the ball with topspin, allowing players to drive through the ball without losing control or letting it float too long. They say it's less effective in windy conditions, so they're saying the high trajectory and heavy spin can be more difficult to control in windy conditions, which may force a player to adjust their grip. So mostly those drawbacks come from handling low balls or moving toward the net. So let's take a look at the finish. So if you look at the finish, his entire body, his shoulders, chest, hips, knees, feet, all rotate the opposite direction to which he started. What is also interesting is that his head and eyes remain on the ball. The paddle is all the way over his opposite side shoulder, and sometimes he'll finish at an open stance, and when the next ball comes, he hops right into that neutral closed stance again. By the time the ball reaches his apex, his body is already within range of hitting that ball. So if you've watched my videos previously, you know that I've talked about a training or skill development methodology called the ecological approach or the ecological dynamics theory. So for continuing off of that, the reason I want to look at a video like this is to look at the invariants. A really good example of an invariant for the forehand drive or ground stroke is the swing path. Regardless of who you are, this rings true for everybody. The swing path has to be a low to high motion. Regardless of their size, the environment that they're in, we know that there are certain traits within a movement that apply to everyone across the board, right? So we know that if we want to develop power, I think the knee bend makes a lot of sense. We do know that movements can look different depending on the individual, but they can still produce the same results. Obviously, things like a forehand drive does not require a Western grip. that's really just up to that particular individual. Even as far as topspin goes, there's plenty of players who can produce good amount of topspin without having to use a Western grip. But if we're looking at this forehand drive, what are some of those invariants? I think that bending the knees would apply to everyone. It's just something that is required to produce that power. If you were to look at an athlete that doesn't bend their knees, if we were to look at an athlete that doesn't bend their knees, could we produce that same result? Certain aspects of the prep can vary, certainly. I've seen players have a bent elbow in their swing. There are certain athletes who have a straight arm as well. Eyes remaining on the ball, that is going to apply to everyone, right? You want to keep your eyes on the ball. There's certainly some athletes who hold that gaze a little bit longer, so they might just watch that ball all the way through contact, while some players might be looking at where they intend for that ball to go and then just hit it from there. Something that is also interesting is the stance. So there's open, closed, there's neutral, semi-open. So I think that's also an interesting aspect, is the stance. Something that would also apply to everyone is striking the ball at the apex. I think that would definitely allow for a more consistent strike. The paddle following the height of the ball, or at least the paddle being either the same height of the ball or below it, is something that probably critical for striking for a forehand drive. I was always curious to see what he looked like with a slowed down version of his form and technique. Certainly a lot more to kind of take away from this. So something that could vary between who the individual is what to do with your offhand. So that's the hand that's not on the racket or paddle. I believe they call that tracking. They either call that tracking or tracing, but I know that a lot of typically what they teach people to do with that offhand is follow the ball. And then once you're striking through, that your shoulders turn and kind of let that hand or arm move a little bit more freely. Let's see what Quang does with that hand. He keeps that hand close to him. It doesn't look like he's necessarily tracking. Maybe towards the end, but he just lets it swing. Oh, he just lets it roll with the way his body goes. So let's see. It goes again. It's like he keeps it on his paddle and he just uses it. Keeps that offhand on his paddle, and at the finish, he's catching his paddle hand, his dominant hand. I think that can vary depending on who the athlete or the performer is. I don't know if that's something that would apply to every single performer. Cool. Well, that's it. I took this video at the PPA Worlds and was just very curious. Figured I'd share it with you. Let me know if you have any questions or if you like these types of videos. Happy to do more of them. It's been helpful for me just to learn as well. But let me know if you have any questions. And of course, thank you, Quang, for letting me film you. Shout out to Bao and Duke. The kid's got an exciting career ahead of him. Excited to see what he does. Anyways, thanks.